Good morning and welcome back to Around the Block with GoodBlock and 2023. Sean and Nathaniel here, and we have a fun interview today to talk about the topic that's been hotly debated in the past couple of years. Are NFTs a scam? We've brought in our friend, the Big Gooey, an expert in NFT space and NFT curator for the Telos Foundation. Before we dive in, just a reminder to hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you know when we have new videos. All right, let's get started. Welcome, Big Gooey. It's great to have you here today.
Hey, gang. Thanks for having me on. It's an honor.
Tell us a little bit about your career path or how you got started into the NFT space as an NFT curator.
Yeah, so I guess a long story short is I started out as just an artist. I was supporting collections on Ethereum, Solana. I was even doing some work on the native chain on Telos for about 6 months. And then I basically just kind of, I would say, irritated my way into telling the TF that they needed somebody on NFTs full time because it was right at the kind of end of the bull run and things were going down. But I could really see what NFTs meant in the broader scope. So I've just been helping Telos really get its ecosystem, its infrastructure, and be an authority for anybody coming into the ecosystem to help them launch collections, help them facilitate any kind of connections in the space. So it's been a really wild ride.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it has. NFTs have blown up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's been a really interesting kind of place to live right now because it's been such a lull for a long time, and the public perception of NFTs is really at an all-time low as well. So
Right.
I always try to turn those into opportunities in that, like, this is the best time to be tinkering with, experimenting with, trying out new meta that's out there, and because it just rolls onto itself almost every week now, and things get left in the dust. So now is really the time to be tinkering, I think.
Yeah, you said something earlier. What was that? Something about the sun?
The sun is shining on NFTs right now, yeah.
Yeah, that was great. Loved that.
Yeah, that's a great.
Or a direct spotlight, depending on the perspective.
What do I mean, with that in mind, that I believe that is true, but at the same time, there's also a lot of folks out there who are seeing NFTs as a scam. You hear that, and you've already kind of a little bit of addressed that, but why is it that some people see it that way, and what are ways that you would say that we can turn that around to help people see the possibilities that NFTs open up for the future?
No, it's a great question. And I think the first thing that always comes to mind is a lot of the space kind of is scamming with ruggy PFP projects. And because it's an unregulated industry at the moment, there's a lot of accountability issues. So I think that it's kind of like anything in a new pioneering field is you have to have gone through enough of the steps inside of it before it's come to its like full ideation. Like where we are right now, I think is kind of a rounding error inside of what the tech is doing, and I don't think it's really fully realized itself. So I think there's aspects that are very malicious within the space, but I also think I see communities coming together trying to establish kind of norms of trust, and really start exploring what tech can do outside of like flexing on people on Twitter or any social media that you're basically using this ape to broadcast that you're part of some social pistache, I guess.
I like that.
Yeah, with crypto being the Wild West, there are going to be some snake oil salesmen,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That doesn't
absolutely.
mean like the towns are under attack, like we have good established crypto bases that we can use to actually launch NFT platforms off of.
I think for us, it means that we are in a position where we have to navigate that when we're in this space, within
For sure.
within these spaces, is learning to navigate around all the bad actors that are out there to help people see the possibilities.
Well, and I don't think that the like overall headlines of who the top shop players are recently have been that great. So you've got like, Donald Trump's digital card collection, which was just basically like a licensing facade like he's always kind of done. And I don't think really helped bring authenticity, agency, or like people were always about like, oh, this is going to onboard millions of people because they're going to be interested, and it turns out it didn't, right? It just turned into
Right.
another wash tradey grift. that I'll keep the politics out of it, but follows a very similar trajectory to his business. And then on top of, you see the Solana ecosystem crashing and not doing very well. And then you just kind of see the overall, like I think 80% of all trades in NFTs were wash traded last year.
Yeah.
So it's really tough to get a metric or a bead on where the thing is. But I think like I approach it very much I come from a labor organizing background, and fighting in the kind of labor fight in BC here. So I saw a lot around the tech and especially Telos around how that can help working class people. So it's kind of my goal and my mission to make sure that I can combine what NFTs are doing and how flexible they are with just helping working class people, because I think that's really what this can all do. And I think once we start moving towards these cases where you see people of authority, people that are trusted, start stepping into the fray and doing projects in unique ways that I think are daring, but are trying to push the envelope, that's when I think this is all going to take some traction. And I think that it's quietly doing it in the background, because you see things like Polygon integrating with Starbucks. And I think more of those kind of deals where NFTs will be grabbing larger batch infrastructure for corporations, for anything that wants to utilize the technology. You're just not really going to see it. It's all going to be kind of custodial, wallety, until you opt out of how to remove yourself from that kind of closed circuit. But I do ultimately have super high hopes, and I think, like I was saying earlier, we're just in this weird rounding error phase, and I think that because crypto is so financially intertwined, and now NFTs have kind of like grafted to the side of that, it's really hard to escape, where an investor is and where an artist is. They're so intermingled. But I think that the artist has now tempered that space to be like, no, it's not just money. A lot of people talk about community being a utility of NFTs, but I keep saying it's the whole point. And I think it's really allowed us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's allowed us to reimagine how communities and connections come together and how they interact and how they're valued even. So I think that that's always what I come back to when, even in a market like this, I'm sure you guys have the same kind of self-doubt about what am I even doing here. And I think that like when I lean back into the communities that I've become part of and the friendships I've made and the artists that I've grown to know and inspire me, it just further retrenches me to be like, yeah, there really is something of interest here that just might take some time to get noticed.
When normal people work on this kind of project, you're like, okay, yeah, this means something. Not just investors are working on it, but regular people are trying to promote it and build it, and not necessarily for the money, because right now, we're in crypto winter part 2, and people are still working on it. People still want to go and make the space better. Yes, there are snake oil salesmen, and that is always part of the conversation. People will always try and make money, but for the most of the people who are using the blockchain that I talk to are just trying to use it in everyday circumstances.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like it probably sounds similar to like the ICO boom, right? Like, and people were just like, crypto's a scam.
Yeah.
So I think it's like the echoing of these kind of frontier technologies. You can't really take what's happening right now as a leading indicator for where things are going, because it's so tumultuous.
Yeah.
Right.
It flips on itself every day. So it's like I'm just in here, rubbing it all on me, trying to figure out what's what. Not to say that I don't think people should start projects right now, but I really think people should be looking at what projects are doing, looking at life cycles, looking at like kind of from a macro view, because if you're in there, you're trading, you're trying to launch a project, and you're not like taking those periodic steps back for perspective, I think you're really going to do damage to yourself, because in some places it's very toxic, and because we live our lives online, especially in crypto, it just sucks you into that black hole. So I think really taking a breath and realize that if you're making mistakes right now, as long as you're doing it kind of in honest or in good faith and come clean about it. Like there's been a few times when I just haven't brought something across the line with a project and people have been like, hey, I don't think you're doing XYZ. is it's like, okay, I'm not just going to be like, that's full FUD. It's like, what have I fallen short of here?
Oh,
And really try to make amends with those things and build the trust, because that's how the space moves forward.
I love that approach. I think that's really great. When you're thinking about this space and you're thinking about NFTs, let's discuss a little bit some of the other use cases for NFTs. Big in discussion right now, obviously, is the art space, which is where you are rooted. When I was in Austin, I was in the Grit Daily podcast with Blake Jameson, who's an NFT artist who approaches it from a different side than you. He was a fine artist who got into the NFT space. He's well known with sports figures. He just has done a lot of professional sports artists, and he'll do their paintings, and then he sells NFTs of those as well. So obviously there's the art side, whether it's fine arts and like one-offs, and then there's also the other side of it, which is kind of the side where you're working at. What are some of the other things that, and I don't want to get into that in just a minute, but what are some of the other things, Nathaniel, TBG, that you guys see as ways that NFTs can be a use case in the future for the world?
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of use cases, that I know of, like for art and gaming and fashion. Dolce and Gabbana just came out with an NFT that was also a wearable.
Wearable in the metaverse. You know,
Oh,
just
was it? I thought it was actually tied to a real piece of.
well, maybe they
piece of
do.
clothing.
Maybe they have something, because most of the wearables that I'm familiar with are only in the metaverse. But if there's NFTs tied to real objects, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up after this. That sounds really fascinating.
You got brands like Uniquely, who put like
Right.
RFI tags in their
Mhm.
clothing. So I got one when I was in New York where you scan it and then you mint it essentially so that you can get the physical online. And then
How
that's like a
cool.
GLB file that you can import to like Decentraland, to Mona, like anywhere that you've got like an avatar.
Mm-hmm.
As long as there's the like WebGL to display it on top of the character, then it's usually good.
Oh, that's super
Awesome.
interesting. I think we also mentioned licensing and certification. I think those are going to be things like that. Fractional ownership. Right? I think those things are going to be a lot bigger, and they're going to start taking a larger role as people discover and understand that they can play a significant role in the blockchain space and in the world in general, in the online world, because of how trackable and how recordable it is to be able to say, okay, you have a certification, you took this test online, or you took this test at college, whatever, it could be anywhere. Here is your NFT that is then verifiable. So you wouldn't have necessarily new congressmen padding their resume with BS, because their certifications or their job history could be trackable by an NFT.
Very topical.
Very topical.
It just thought of it.
And I think also too, like,
hey.
take like the Taylor Swift debacle for her tickets, right? Like if that had been an on-chain NFT, you definitely would have seen a different dynamic play out, and they wouldn't have had the, to halt things. And I think that like it will be a much more benign interaction, like I was saying. If I buy a Ticketmaster ticket to go see Kendrick Lamar at, GM Place down here, I just have to show up with my NFT and they scan it, that it's in there. I think that is a much simpler and a much clearer path through to like, everybody wants to solve this onboarding issue. And I think it's like, you just have to innocuously do it until it's so part of the fabric of people's lives that, then they have to start making that kind of fulcrum push into opening a wallet or examining crypto at a deeper level. So
they might not even be calling them NFTs because they won't think about it in
that way. Yeah, and I actually think that like I've seen a broader push to rebrand, kind of like crypto became Web3, is I think we'll start seeing NFTs being called digital collectibles, digital assets. It's just so stained in the public like memory, I think, from the last bull run. And you see like Yuga getting sued by the SEC, and all the like somebody, I can't remember which project, I just read that the SEC is like taking them to court because they rugged. So it's like we are starting to see some mechanisms around enforcement start to happen. And I think that might, I mean, fingers crossed, broadcast a greater message to, malicious actors, that it's like, now we are starting to see some ramifications for what happens. But I mean, the whole thing with FBS doesn't have me totally optimistic about it, but again, I come back to that. We're in the trough of despair right now, especially in NFTs. So I think this is really the time to be connecting with people that you respect, people that you trust, and interlinking with those communities because we always talk about interoperability and being buzzwordy and that, but I think that it's like it doesn't really mean anything if you don't know other people in other ecosystems. So it's like I kind of come back to like friendship is the interoperability, right? And
Yeah.
not always dunking on everybody else because it's not your chain. So that like, if they have a success, rather than being like you got to study it from abroad, somebody in that ecosystem that can share that information, right? And I think the more we push for open sourcing ideas amongst each other, we don't have to solve the problem ourselves all the time, and we can just like leapfrog. And I think
Right.
until we get to a spot where the greater community sees the goal of the tech being more realized than just exit liquidity, we're not going to see a lot of changes. But I'm optimistic that in 5 years, this will just be so ubiquitous to what how we live our lives and what it's become that I think ultimately it's just patience,
Right.
Yeah.
as with crypto.
Right.
And NFTs like always pair well with something else, like a
Mm-hmm.
ticket or like a smart contract or
Right.
something like that. We're just waiting really for the next thing. And before NFTs are, you were saying like the name, right, is ubiquitous with something. Well, it's like with the art.
Right.
NFTs are very share that idea with art, and like you said, digital assets, a ticket or clothing or a game item, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be art. So
Right.
we can pull them out and pair them with different things and they're still useful. And you're right. Ubiquitous, small little things. When you use your credit card, you just swipe your credit card, you don't think about it.
100%.
That's where I think you're right about where NFTs should be going there.
We'd love to get your take on AI in NFT space.
Yeah.
We don't have very
Oh
much
boy.
time. We don't have very much time left, but it would be good to be educated on that. And again, we recognize that there are some bad actors, but there are lots of good actors as well. So give us your take on that.
I am enamored with AI, especially in regards to art. I've been spending a lot of time learning Midjourney, kind of in and out, as well as like a lot of peripheral tools for AI. Because I think as soon as I started working with Chat GPT, it kind of like clicked in my head as
Yeah.
to what this all means. So I think we're probably moving into a space that's like post content, post image, in that I've generated more art last year than I probably did in my entire life. So I think we will see this kind of telescoping in and out of what's valuable and what's not. And I think that
Mhm.
like we're in this space right now where there's so many debates and conversations around AI itself, but I think what it means in terms of NFTs is I come back to that. I love AI because it allows people to explore their imaginations in a more realized fashion, I guess. And at the same time opens doors for people who I have blind spots around, like physically disabled people, um, you know, just anybody that has an
Yeah.
issue mechanically to create art now has the potential of their imagination to be realized. And I think that as soon as you start playing with AI in any way, it is the ultimate reflecting pond in that there are so many internal conversations I have with myself as I'm using it that at least for me, I've really started to see it as an augmentation of what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's simply this tool to help increase or refine my output. So
Yes.
I always say with AI, it's garbage in, garbage out with most things. So I think it has unparalleled potential within NFTs. Like I've already tried a couple collections where I experimented with AI, but then added a human layer of writing stories for the images I created. So I think it's even when humans make something without intent, it feels hollow or empty or lifeless or vacuumed. But when you see an inspiring presentation or musician, you can be elevated to the levels that they aspire to take you to. So I think the same can be done with AI.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people need to be less scared about this being a robotic overlord that takes over your life because it's been running in the background forever on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, like it on Amazon. Your entire life is now integrated with AI without knowing it. It's now just visually before us, and I think that humans are funny in that until they experience something where more than their senses of just thinking are brought in, they really fully realize it. Because when I walk people through using AI, especially going into the pipeline of NFTs, they really get it when they put the text prompt in, and it's like, what? And especially with the Midjourney update for version 4, it's this accelerated timeline that I've read Ray Kurzweil talk about. It's like we're on that steep climb. It's all the way up now, and I think we're only going to see this exponential growth and integration of AI within it. But I'm sorry, that was really wordy, but there's so many nuts and bolts in here that
Yeah.
interest me, and because I'm like in it and living inside of it and trying to stay on the bleeding edge of it, it's exciting. It feels like what crypto must have felt like at its very budding inception. It's unexplored possibilities, and they're infinite.
Yeah, you're right. And it doesn't care about copyrights. It doesn't care about original artists. It's what you put in is you get something that you imagined out if you can make the tool do what you want it to do, right?
Well, it's got so many echoes of like remix culture from
Yeah,
like hip hop of the '90s, right?
like
When it's
late
like
90s.
the copyright hammer was coming down on everybody,
Mhm.
and so the goal then became how to hide your sample so you didn't get caught, and that was the art. So I think we'll see similar things with AI, right?
I
Where
agree.
I always try to create photorealistic AI stuff of like Pepe's, right? So it's absurd, but I want to focus it in so that it's like sits in an uncanny valley of like what, like was this a human, like I love that ambiguity, but there again so many conversations that happen around it, and there's playing out in real time, and I get to be part of it, which is really the best part of it.
So when you use AI, are you very careful about making sure that like copywriting is like either you're copywriting your material or that other people are or other people who have copyrighted material aren't influencing your work?
Short answer, no. I really am just kind of it's all up for grabs, and we're all swimming in that sea. And if somebody's gonna take my idea and ideate on it, and that was enough to tell them, I'm not precious enough to say like mine. And I think that the greater growth happens when we like Leonard Nimoy said, the more we share, the more we have, and
Like
I'm
let
very firm in that.
let go of ownership, be inspired by other people have created.
Yeah, which is kind of the opposite of what NFTs are trying to do. So there's that kind of duality of thought that I think can happen at the same time.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time today and for joining us today. And we're going to go into the BS of the week. Uh,
Thanks so much
Thank
for having
you
me.
very much for being here. And we want to continue this conversation in the future with you. So we hope that you're back, that you come back.
Anytime.
So where can we find you?
Probably the best place right now is on Twitter at the Big Gooey. I'm always swimming around in the Telos community chat. We've got a NFT community hub Discord, which I can drop a link for. That if you're interested in NFTs on Telos at all, and we got some daring projects already made and on the rise. Please check us out there.
We're going to put those in the description below, so they'll be in the description. Again, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
That was such a great interview. Thank you so much, Big Gooey, for being here. We've got to have a part 2. We've got to have him back. Next up, let's do a unusually quick Moss's Market Minute.
60 seconds on the clock, if you please. So, in this market minute, all I have to say is doom and gloom. BlackRock just came out with its new prospectus for 2023, and they basically say, how are you going to deal with 35% inflation this year? them as the biggest investor in the market right now is a bad question to be asking. There isn't really much going on in the market. Everything seems to be just staying flat and not moving. Everybody's waiting for the next big thing. Meanwhile, everybody's losing a little bit of money every day. So just hold on, and I'm sure something will come up for you to reinvest into. And that's my Market Minute.
Way less than 60 seconds. The message
Way
is
less.
Hold,
Yeah. Hold, or just sell if you can't hang on. It's only a realized loss if you cash out.
Sell. Hopefully, everyone's invested in good projects. Even in a bear market, good projects are not going to have the perceived value, and that's okay.
And do your research, right? Like, don't invest in projects that are copy pastes of like 2 images together. That's speaking of NFTs and a particular gentleman's NFTs. Don't copy paste 2 images together and then call them an NFT and expect that you're going to get $1 billion off of it.
Yeah. Speaking of darkness, doom and gloom, let's talk about the block stuff BS of the week. Nathaniel, what do you have for us?
We have one particular one, and that is that the D&D Open Gaming license, the new one 1.1, has come out or leaked, or it's in various stages of being out there, and it's pretty terrible. And let me back up a little bit further. This is for like Dungeons and Dragons, and this is Wizards of the Coast's promise to its players, that it wouldn't try and take their copyrighted material and use it for themselves and not give the players profit. It tried to protect the creators. But in this new one, in 1.1, they've taken all of those protections for the players and they flipped it around, and now they're protections for Wizards of the Coast. So 1 or 2 key pieces of text are like, you own the new and original content that you create, but you agree to give us a non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, sub-licensable, royalty-free license to use your content for any of their purposes. They can give you 30 days notice to cease and desist using their product, and that they still can use your product to promote their own goals. Like if they wanted to create a world based on one of your ideas, they could. If they wanted to make toys off of Critical Role, I don't know if you guys know Critical Role, but that's kind of a D&D series. If Wizards of the Coast wants to make the toys based off of it, the Critical Role has no recourse, and they would not get paid. It has turned a community that was based on sharing in ideas and information a lot like NFTs, right? It's very non-ownership based, but everyone owns their own thing, and Hasbro has forced Wizards of the Coast to flip this around, and now it's protecting Wizards of the Coast and going after the content creator.
Oh, that sucks. No matter
it's pretty tragic.
Yeah, whatever industry you're in, and I think that the big players oftentimes, quote unquote, protect themselves, but really they're just being greedy in this manner, whether it's D&D or any other kind of gaming or material. Right. That becomes the standard user agreement. Is that the
OGL has been out for 30 years at this point. So for them to flip it around like this has really upset a lot of people, pretty much the entire community, me included, even though I don't even produce any content for it publicly. We'll be moving on to other games, and you can just always not produce content with this license. You could do something else.
Yeah, people will figure workarounds. All right, this was a fun interview. Like I mentioned earlier, we've got to do a part 2. This brings us to the end of today's episode. If you want to learn more about the Web3 world, check us out wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you know of a person or project you'd like to see featured on our show, let us know in the comments or Telegram or Twitter. And don't forget this: like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification icon, and we'll see you guys next time.